I remember the day that it hit me, the day that I realized that I hated other men. What's up, Unbroken Nation? I hope that you're doing well wherever you are in the world today. Yesterday, what is yesterday? No, it was a couple days ago. Sorry, all the days seem to go together these days. I was having dinner with a friend and then breakfast with a friend the next day. Both days I'm sitting having these conversations and eating, breaking bread with these two really and amazing men in my life, both similar in age and experience, but very different backgrounds, very different walks of life, very different things that have led us to where we are today. And in both the conversations, something really fascinating came up that I've known, but it's interesting as you grow, you see this connection starting to happen more around the truth that a lot of us grow up being the word that I want to use here, and I don't want to be callous when I said this, is we grew up hating each other as men. And for some of us, maybe hate's strong, but hear me out. When I was a child, my stepfather really reinforced in me fear, like this massive, massive sense of fear. And that fear was of violence, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual violence that came from his hands. He was arguably the most abusive person in my life. He would literally beat the shit out of my brothers and I. He would smash my head into walls, the whole nine. And that was just the physical side. The emotional side might have been worse, actually, because those ideas get instilled in us about our worth, about our validation in the world, about who we are. And it felt like constantly my identity. And you guys have heard me talk about childhood trauma as the theft of identity. That whole idea that I've been sitting in for the last year or so started because I realized it was my stepfather who had stripped me of my identity, probably more so than my mother, my grandmother, community, so on and so forth, right? And so I was making meaning in these conversations I'm having with these guys and just realizing, like, wait a second. The thing that we had in common was the willingness that we had to step in through discomfort to connect with other men. And for me, what happened is when I was about 30 years old, I started kind of looking at the men in my life up to that point. And there have been some really amazing men in my life, and there's been really fucking terrible men in my life. A lot of those were friends or mentors or whatever, right? The whole walk. And at 30 years old, I was sitting one day, I was in therapy, and I realized that one of the things that I felt so desperately, probably more so than anything else, was a lack of connection with men. Because growing up, what happened, and again, you have to understand causation and correlation in this conversation. Like, how do you get to this place? And what I realized was that growing up in a violent household with a man who beat the shit out of me made me terrified of men. Growing up not having my father in my life, having never really met him or connected with him or have him around in any capacity, made me want to be avoidant of men. Growing up, this super poor, homeless kid, along with my brothers, put me in this situation where in school, the other boys would pick on me. They would bully me. They would, whatever comes along with that. And so that made me not want to be in connection with boys either. And so that leads to this place where it ends up being this thing where I notice there's this massive disconnect with my relationship and men. And then what I started to notice, and especially in my 20s, now, of course, like anything, guys, hindsight, I assure you, is 2020 vision, because in the moment I didn't realize it. Now, I'm not going to shit on all the guys who were friends with me in my late teens and 20s, because some of those men are still in my life and I still love and cherish greatly. Some of them I know listen to this show all the time, and some of them not so much. And I think that's just a part of this journey of life. And so on the one hand, I have these guys who pushed me and wanted me to be great. And on the other hand, I had these other guys who they just wanted me to party and be drunk guy and have fun. And you kind of figure that out as you go, right? Well, fast forwarding again to 30 years old, I'd realized that there was this massive emotional disconnect between me and other men. And the brotherhood that I had been seeking, that I thought was the thing that I wanted at a deeper level, was bathed in things that were not bringing value to my life. It was bathed in money and cars and drugs and women and food and all that shit. You guys have heard me say this a million times. And what happened was I was in that moment recognizing the lack of emotional capacity that I had in terms of connection with other men. And I made a decision to join a men's trauma therapy group. And it was fucking terrifying. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget. So what happened was, I'll paint a picture for you. I had to go to the therapist's office first. He had been a guy I had sought out, who I knew was an expert in this space, who I felt really could benefit me and help me. And with him and in connection with him, I asked him, hey, can I join your group? Because I knew they had the group. And I think he'd been my therapist for a month or so, maybe 2 months before I made the request. And so he asked me a question. And it's not that it caught me off guard, but I didn't really know how to answer it. And it felt very strange in the moment. Now I understand why he asked me the question. He said, are you willing to actually talk? And I was like, bitch, I'm sitting here talking to you right now. What are you talking about? And what that question actually meant was, like, if I stepped into that room, that circle of these men sitting here, would I be willing to actually speak my truth, to have a conversation, to look at and acknowledge the experiences of my past that had led me to this moment? And I sat there for a second, really thinking about that, because here I was in this new depth of therapy, and I was doing Gestalt, if you're familiar. And it was really, really powerful for me, because what I had started to kind of like puzzle piece together were the experiences of life that had brought me to that place. And I thought to myself, well, what is the point and the meaning of all of this? The answer, of course, as you know, is what am I willing to do to have the life that I want to have? The answer being no excuses, just results. And in that, the willingness to follow up and show up and follow through for the things that I believe are going to move me further into what it is that I want to create in my life. And so the answer, as I sat across from him, was yes, I'll show up. And that decision, singularly in that moment, felt like the scariest thing I'd ever said yes to in my life, because I had so much. I wish I could convey in words that would really carry the weight of what I'm about to say, but I don't think I can, because from an emotional standpoint, it was so heavy, because my attitude towards men in general, especially around emotional things, were like, I don't like them. I don't want to be around them. There was a lot of fear, right? This is a thing people do not talk about. And the reason that sparked this conversation, what I'm getting into, is because as I'm having dinner and having conversations with these friends, these men friends of mine, we all kind of came to the same conclusion. There was always some kind of disconnect for us as boys as having emotional connection with men. And so as I'm sitting across from this therapist, making this decision, getting struck by this idea that I don't have any emotional connection to men in any capacity, and understanding that I want to attempt to build that, it required me really effectively to step into fear, a deep, deep sense of fear, because I was terrified. Like, I really was. Like, it was the fear of judgment, of shame, of guilt, of not being manly enough, of not being, someone who had a shit together, of not being strong, words you hear all the time when people are having comparison. And I was very much in that space. And there's this whole space and time between the moment that I said yes and then me actually having the first session with these guys. And in that space, and it makes sense what I'm about to say, there had to be an approval to enter the group. It wasn't approval in, i.e., someone's going to check off some boxes and see if you qualify, but it was they had to be willing to welcome someone else. And I want to say it was about 2 weeks before I got the confirmation. And every day, just constantly for 2 weeks, I felt this massive sense of anxiety. And that anxiety was like, what if they reject me? What if they say no? Like, what am I going to do? Because I want this, right? I want so badly to be able to connect with other men and to share this vulnerable experience and to put myself out there in a way that is going to be beneficial for me. And it kind of haunted me for 2 weeks. And then at one point, I distinctly remember this. I was walking home. I think I'd grabbed lunch at, there's this like teriyaki chicken place I used to go all the time. And I'm walking back home. It's like, I don't know, 30-minute walk. I chose to walk that day because it was a nice day. And I remember a sense of anger coming over me, like this massive, almost rage. Again, that word hate that I used came up, and I was like, fuck those guys. Because it had been like 8 days or something, right? I was like, fuck them. And that was just me, throwing up a wall and putting it there to keep people out. Like I understand that about myself. And in that, the next day, because I did not have the tools 7 years ago to say what I'm about to say, because today I'd just be like, oh yeah, I understand where that comes from, it'll be fine. 7 years ago it was like I'm harboring in the chaos of that. And so the next day, or it might have been 2 days later, I get the call, hey, you've been accepted, the guys want to have you come in, but the way that we always do this is it's preliminary. So you come in for a month, you do these sessions, and at the end of the month everyone will actually vote whether or not you stay. And I was like, what the fuck is this, Survivor? I literally said that on the phone to my therapist. He goes, look, dude, we created it this way for a reason. And that's so that it's beneficial on all sides. So it's reciprocal on all sides. So it's people pushing each other on all sides. And I thought to myself, oh, okay, that's interesting. That makes sense to me. I'm willing to go through that. I'm willing to put myself in this, what felt like a precarious situation of massive discomfort for a month, not knowing the outcome for the very thing that it is that I wanted, connection emotionally with other men in a healthy and safe space. And I said, all right, let's do it. And the next week I go to the first session and I walk in this room and there's these 5 guys. And the therapist, not the burger place. It's funny. I used to joke about that. It's not even that funny, but it's funny to me. And and I'm sitting there, I walk in and, all eyes are on you. You're the new guy. Now they're talking, but you can kind of feel the fucking tension in the room. Not necessarily like a bad tension, but just the tension of the unknown. And I'm sitting there, the session's about to start, and therapist goes, all right, this is how we do this. He goes, first thing we're going to do is we're all going to do a check-in. And the check-in was very simple, where for 2 minutes, you just talked about your week or your day or the moment you were in. And then they were going to have me introduce myself in a deeper level. He didn't want to interrupt the flow of the check-in, which I actually respected. I thought that was really cool because I did not want the fucking spotlight on me. Like, honestly, I was so uncomfortable in the moment. I was like, do not make me do this first. And then what I would find out is like there was kind of like this system where it kind of always started with the seat you were in. And I won't really get into that. But so the first guy goes, the next guy goes, next guy goes. I'm the 4th guy. And I go and I do my check-in, and I'm like, I'm just really fucking nervous about being here. And I said it exactly like that. And you could kind of see the look on the other guys' faces, and there was a little bit of nod in the room, and they're like, yep, get that. Yeah, we all have this experience too. We've been in that seat. And just kind of like the seeing that, feeling the expression of their reaction to that calmed me. And the next guy goes, and we kind of wrap and kind of get into this thing where whoever wants to take space can take space, except because it was my first day, what I had to do was talk about my story. Now, at this point, it's been probably 4 years that I'd been having these conversations, talking about some of the darkness that had happened. And, I've always told you guys on this show, there's things I will literally never say on this podcast. They just do not need to see the light of day. I cannot fathom a planet on which these things need to be said in a public aspect like this with tens and tens of thousands of people listening. And that's just because they're so fucking dark. Right. I've healed those things. I've moved through those things, but they're just very, very dark. And as I sat there and it was my time to go through, it was about that emotional dump. And it was actually the first time I'd done it outside of a one-on-one therapy situation. And as I sat there with these guys, just feeling, they were all looking at me too. Not in a judgmental way, but obviously I'm fucking in the room talking. I'm the new guy. They're looking at me. And I just start to paint this picture. I talk about my mother cutting my finger off. I talk about being homeless. I talk about bedwetting. I talk about, putting a restraining order on my mom. I talk about the abusive, psychopathic grandmother who's a racist, my stepfather, never meeting my dad, the high school dilemmas, the money, the sex, the drugs, the cars, all that stuff. And I also talked about the other things, the things that I, again, will never say on this show. And it was fucking heavy because it was like, here I am in this room. And let me preface this in case I might have maybe glazed over it too quickly. I was encouraged to just lay it all out on the table by my therapist leading up. He said, this is a space for you to come in and keep it real. And these guys are going to see through your bullshit if you come in here bullshitting. And he said, in this space, the thing that you can do is be yourself and know that there's no shame, no guilt, no judgment. And that doesn't mean that people in this room, these men in this room, aren't going to push you or push back or call you out. And I was like, great, that's exactly what I fucking want. And he encouraged me. He said, dude, just lay it all out. If the whole session is yours, everyone in that room will get it. You lay it all out. And that's exactly what I did. And at points in it, just tearing up, feeling massive sense of anger, just sharing the story and kind of wrapping it up and saying, I hate that I'm even in this room with you guys, but I know that it's going to change my life. And seeing the reaction from that was like my closer, right? It was like my closing sentence. I was like, I don't fucking want to be here. I hate all of you. This really sucks, but I know it's going to matter. And so I have this moment with them. And what was really beautiful about that moment is that every single one of them were just like, dude, we get it. We understand why you're here. We're here for the same purpose. We want to build and bond and connect and go through and work through the chaos of our lives to become better versions of ourselves, to be better men. And it was the first time I'd felt a real sense of connection. Now that connection would grow over the couple of years that I was in that group, but initially it was very much a back and forth. And there'd be good days in that room, and there would be bad days in that room. And there would be days where there's a lot of fucking anger in that room. And there were days that we called each other out in that room. And there's days we pissed each other off, but there's days that we loved each other and hugged each other and brought each other massive value and showed care for each other and did, and I'll put it this way, did what we needed that we didn't get when we were boys. And I mean, I'm even getting a little emotional thinking about it because it was beautiful. And it's hard to describe. It's hard to describe when you actually have that moment happen in your life where that thing that you're seeking is like right there. And you're like, oh my God, like this is what I was looking for. This level of connection, this level of love, this level of admiration, but also this level of like realness. And there were fucking drag out arguments in there nobody ever hit each other, but I'll tell you what, we were damn close a couple of times. And, that's why I think sometimes you definitely need to, check in with yourself before you walk in a room like that and be like, what am I really needing today? Because without the openness and the willingness to be called out, you're going to have a real hard fucking time. And I'll never forget, I was sitting across from one of the guys who has played just a tremendous role in my life. Somebody I'll never forget till the day I die. And I mentioned this on the show before. He called me out and he goes, "You don't know how to be angry." And I remember being like, I literally go, "Fuck you, I know how to be angry." And he goes, No. You know anger. You know anger. You know how to hurt. You know how to break. You know how to destroy. But you don't know how to be the emotion. You don't know how to let it sit and exist and be a part of who you are. And I thought about that in that moment, and it really, if I could pinpoint any pivotal moment in that men's group program over the course of that 2 years, all the hundreds of conversations, so many interactions, so many back and forths, all the everything, nothing brought me more value in that time frame than that one sentence, that one call out, that one, "Here it is, motherfucker, pay attention, because we are the mirror of who it is that you are. And if you're willing to see this, it'll change your life." And that's exactly what happened. And he called me out. And I sat in it. And I was like, he's fucking right. And it hit me so hard. I was like, I know how to break things. I know how to hurt people. I know how to smash. I know how to scream and yell and hit. But I don't know how to be in the emotion of anger, because it was stripped of me, right? Being a little boy, being told anger is not okay, being told don't cry, being beat so hard that I literally physically could not cry, gasping for air, being beat in ways that it was like, if you cry, I'll hit you harder. And what happened is eventually, right, I learned how to put anger at the very bottom. And so every time I got mad, it would be like this massive lash out. And it could be over nothing. Like, my brothers will attest to this all day long. In my teens and my 20s, like, the littlest thing would send me through the fucking roof. And it was chaos sometimes. The last time I got in a fight, and I got in a lot of fights in my life, hundreds. I don't have no idea how many fights I've been in. And the last time I got in a fight was 4th of July, like 24 years old, and I punched my brother in the face. And I was just like, dude, what the fuck am I doing right now? It might have been, I was 24. And it was over nothing. Just things that don't even matter, like could not possibly matter less in the human experience. But because of the person I was and because of the lack of healing, that came up because I didn't know how to process anger. I didn't know what to do with the emotion of being upset. And that call out was so powerful for me in that moment, right? And so now when anger shows up in my life, I know how to navigate it. And so a couple years in that group had such a profound and tremendous impact on my life, not only in that human connection with men that I was talking about, but understanding the truth. Like, it's okay to have men in your life. Like, I know this might sound weird if you don't connect to this, but the people that do, this makes sense. I know it makes sense because it made sense for me. And as I look on the other side of this studio right now at the pictures, it's me with all these incredible men who have spoken into my life, who have given me their tools, have taught me, who have mentored me and winged me and shadowed me and been what I needed at a depth to get to where I am, and who are going to support me to get to where I want to go. And had I not had the moment at 30 years old of recognizing a really strong truth of my fear of men, there's no fucking way I'd be here talking to you right now. I never would have found the courage. I never would have found the bravery. I never would have had the support to be here having this conversation. And I joined that group because I so desperately wanted to be a part of something. And because I so desperately wanted to be a part of something that was about men, I had to go and seek it. I had to go and find it because I found a lot of value in therapy just in general, right? And I've said that before. And I found a lot of value in coaching. I found a lot of value in books. I found a lot of value in support groups, but I never found anything. I, I don't even have the word for it. Nothing remotely fucking close to what I found in the emotional and mental support and the pushing and the growth and the healing of being in that men's group. And it was everything to me. Now, obviously, it was with a spin through Gestalt therapy, but in the years, I've been in other men's groups that have been supportive as well, masterminds, transformation courses, like you name it, right? Just trying to play this a little bit closer and understand it a little bit more and be able to navigate it better, this thing called relationships with men. And as I look at some of the guys I've spent time with over the course of the last couple of years, like they're fucking amazing, amazing people. And what's really interesting is now I'm not scared of them anymore. And I'm not afraid of the emotional capacity of connection with them. And also I can notice when those men are not emotionally connected, right? I don't necessarily go into this very often on the show, but the men that I coach, that I've coached over the years, that have stepped into this journey, like it's amazing, fucking amazing to sit here and watch their lives change. It is for the women I've coached too, and everyone who identifies who they are, like that's amazing too. But I'll tell you right now, there's something about watching a guy who. So I heard this quote one time from Neil Strauss, and I actually wrote it in the book. I'll paraphrase it because I don't remember the exact quote. He said, "We are living in a society of men walking around like little boys." And that struck me so hard because I thought to myself, yeah, that's incredibly true. That's who I was. I was an immature child for a very long time. Now, of course, again, causation and correlation. I know why that happened. And that's what kind of has driven me into what's starting to happen in Think Unbroken now, between writing Unbroken Man, which will come out in a few months. You can go check that out and pre-order that thing everywhere, but also getting ready to launch an officially, it's kind of unofficial, but it's unofficially official right now, the Men's Trauma Transformation Mastermind, which is a in-depth 6-month group coaching program. There's a website up. It is theunbrokenman.com, theunbrokenman.com. And it's for men in these leadership roles to get unstuck, to learn to love themselves, become the hero of their own story, and take control after childhood trauma and abuse. And I wanted to create that program because I realized it hit me like I can't explain it. It was like it's just like when I started Think Unbroken, right? It just hit me, and I was like, oh, this is the thing I'm supposed to do. And this shift, it's not I don't really call it a pivot. It's just I'm going to step into a different lane for a little bit. And this thought about working with men felt incredibly important to me. It's calling to me in this way I cannot explain. And my hope is that I'm going to be able, in this group, in this community, is going to be able to be the same thing that it was for me 7 years ago. And so as we go through this, there's so much to come. I mean, that website is not even ready yet. The program, not ready yet. Nothing's ever ready yet, right? I tell you guys this all the time, but I'm talking about it because it's ready enough to start having the conversation. And so if you are a man, or if you know a man who is in this position of their life where they know childhood trauma and abuse has impacted them, and some of the calling signs are very similar to mine, you know, lots of issues, lots of anger, lots of not knowing how to communicate and speak, and really violent experiences, and, you know, all the stuff that comes along with it. Go check out theunbrokenman.com. Or is it the or the? I never know. It always comes out different. Theunbrokenman.com. And I'll leave you with this. And this is regardless of if you're man or woman or whatever, it doesn't matter. Community is everything. I've said this to you guys so many times. Community is absolutely everything in this journey, because without community, you feel like you are on the middle of on a raft in the middle of the ocean by yourself. And the truth is you are. And until you find community, until you make a decision to join a community, until you put yourself in a position to have community because you decided, because motherfucker, guess what? Nobody is coming to knock on your door to be like, hey, you should join this group, until you make that decision for yourself. And there are so many different groups. I mean, go to Google, go to meetup.com, go to Reddit. You can find these communities, you can find these groups. And until you do, you're going to continue to feel ostracized. And the fear that you have, I resonate with. Like, fuck, I get it. I get it so much. I get it so fucking much, because that was my experience. That was my journey. I just felt constantly like fucking terrified walking in that room until I didn't. And then I felt a part of something. I was a part of a brotherhood and a community and a place where I had support. And my hope is that you will go and seek that for yourself. If it's not through Think Unbroken and it's not through anything that we do over here, that's fine. It doesn't matter to me. Just go and find it. You have to be willing to do that. For some people, it's like jujitsu or the running club, or it's, kickball in the summer, or, it's book club. There's always something. There are always people who are looking for people who are looking for you. But you got to go find them, my friend. So I'm gonna stop here. I'm gonna tell you thank you for being here on Broken Nation. I appreciate you greatly. Thank you for giving me the space to share this story. Of course, thank you for listening to the show. I just found out today we ranked as the number 19, podcast in Sweden this week, which is phenomenal, like amazing. We've hit the top 20 in like 10 countries. It's because of you guys. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting. Thank you for leaving those reviews on iTunes, because I promise you that's really how this happens, and listening and sharing with friends and telling people, it matters so much. So thank you, my friends. That website, again, if you want to check it out, it's theunbrokenman.com. And don't forget, if you have not read Think Unbroken, it's totally free. Go to book.thinkunbroken.com. You can download the PDF ebook version for free. So with that, Unbroken Nation, thank you, my friends. And until next time, be unbroken. I'll see you.